Welcome to the Early Edge College Football Pick Show brought to you by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. I am your host, Eric Cohen, and a fun Week 4 slate is on tap, so let's bring in our experts to break it all down. Maybe he should change his nickname from the czar of the playbook to the master of the upset. He's absolutely on fire with his picks. It is Emory Hunt. Up next is Arch Manning's biggest fan. Don't worry, we'll debate that later. From the Cover 3 podcast, it's Chip Patterson. And finally, I'm introducing him last for a reason, since I know he really wants to gloat after his Kansas State Wildcats spanked my Arizona team last week. It's M squared, Mike McClure. All right, M squared, let's hear it.
Nothing really to say. It wasn't a conference game. Typically, you schedule the FCS opponents early in the season, and that's kind of what Kansas State made Arizona look like. So fired up to be a Wildcat today. Yeah, that's it. That's all I got to say.
I wish I had a better comeback, but unfortunately not after 7-0 turned into 31-7. All right, let's move forward. I don't want to talk about that game anymore. Let's get into storylines. So Georgia narrowly missed defeat against Kentucky. They have the longest regular season winning streak at 42 games since Oklahoma from 1953 to 57, which had a 45-game streaks. Should they still be the favorite at plus 325 to win the national championship after this close call? Emory, we'll start with you.
I don't think so, because we saw some kinks in the armor last week versus Kentucky, and I felt this way all season about Georgia. The biggest question for me is their passing game, i.e. their quarterback, Carson Beck. I know he does a great job of fitting in, but at times, like last week, you're going to need your QB to play above the X's and O's. I don't believe he has that capability. I think he can manage a game rather well, and that's okay. But if we're talking about a team to bet on looking forward, it has to be Texas, in my opinion, because they have the quarterback that can play above the X's and O's. We've seen him perform well in big games, and we know they are able to match up on the O-line and D-line like a Georgia can. So because they have the difference maker at quarterback, I lean more toward Texas than UGA.
Well, I was thinking about this, who should be the favorite? And I'm going to be going with that team that was next on the list right there, the Ohio State Buckeyes, because should be the favorite to me comes down to your talent level and your schedule. And Ohio State has one of the most talented rosters in the country, and they've got a schedule that's manageable. Now, have they played anybody that tells us anything about whether they can win a national championship going to compete against the other best teams in the country? No. We can't tell that yet, and we won't be able to tell it this week after Marshall. But what I do know is that they are loaded with talent, and they've got the schedule to get there. So I think the Buckeyes should be the favorite.
I'm right there with you guys. It's definitely Texas or Ohio State. I'm going to give it to Texas here, though. I think they've got the more complete team, and it's really not just this season. It is dating back to last season. When you look at what they did down the stretch, on the road at Iowa State, big win, blew out Texas Tech, blew out Oklahoma State, had that close loss in the Sugar Bowl to Washington, or else we would have been talking about them in the national title game. Fast forward to this year, crushed Colorado State, a game they definitely were going to win, but Colorado State has been frisky at times. Crushed Michigan, took care of business against UTSA. I personally think that Texas is the most complete team until someone knocks them off and really gives them a game. They haven't played a competitive game outside of that Sugar Bowl in a long time.
Yeah, I think you guys are spot on with this one. I'm just going to weigh in. I think Ohio State is the best team in the country. I'd put Georgia number 2, Texas number 3. Just my personal rankings. All right. Speaking of Texas, Arch Manning against Quinn Ewers. Which version of Texas are you more confident to bet on? I want to start with you, Chip, because a few weeks ago you gave out Arch Manning as your sleeper Heisman candidate, and now you look really smart.
Yeah, because what did we say before the Michigan game? Quinn Ewers has an injury history. And if Texas is competing for a national championship, no matter who that quarterback is, they are going to be in the Heisman Trophy discussion. But your question to me, EC, is which Texas team are you more confident to bet on? Because while Arch Manning, to me, has a little bit of a bigger frame. He looks a little bit more like the traditional quarterback in the modern era. What Quinn Ewers has done makes me more confident betting on Texas, because Quinn Ewers has gone into Bryant-Denny Stadium and he's taken down Alabama. He's gone into the Big House and he's taken down Michigan. And as Mike mentioned just a little bit ago, he almost had one of the comebacks for the ages in the college football playoff, leading the Longhorns all the way back against Washington in the Sugar Bowl. So I think that if you're talking about, what gives you the, not necessarily the most talent, if you want to wish cast what Texas could look like, I want to bet on what I know. And what I know is that Quinn Ewers can win against the best teams in any kind of environment.
I'm right there with you. It's the Quinn Ewers side as far as which team are you more confident in. But I think this is a fantastic thing for Texas. You couldn't have timed this injury any better, in my opinion. You're getting some nice game speed reps for Arch Manning. You get a lot of time to evaluate him and look at him for really next season. And you get to continue to keep the foot on the gas in every single game here. Style points still matter. They're going to keep the foot on the gas to give Arch more reps. So I think this is a great thing for the program overall, because if that injury does linger or does pop up later in the season, I think Manning will be well more suited to really step in and fill in that spot. So I think it's a great thing for Texas. Again, could not have happened at a better time. Still would rather bet on him with Ewers.
Mike, you're dead on. That's exactly where I was going to go with it, because you have this nice part of the schedule where you can get your young quarterback some reps. But when it comes down to crunch time, you've seen Ewers perform in those situations against SEC quality teams or big game opponents. Therefore, you have to trust a little bit more when Ewers is out there. Now, depending on what we see from Arch Manning in his ball game, will be good, but it won't tell you what he can do against an Alabama, against a Oklahoma, against a Missouri. Those type of games, I feel like you can trust Ewers because we've seen him do it before in those situations.
Emory, just a quick question. Where is Quinn Ewers on your draft board among QBs going into next year?
I will say this, I've been more impressed with his mental toughness this year and his ability to really play above the X's and O's in big games. I like him more than Carson Beck, but he's still behind Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward, Jalen Milroe. I like Brady Cook on that level with Ewers, so that's why I would kind of say. And plus, when you factor in the injury history, to me, I said this 2 years ago, his game, his style reminds me a lot of Kevin Cobb when he was coming out of Houston and played for the Philadelphia Eagles. Same throwing motion, same type of body type. Also had those same type of injuries that just pop up out of nowhere that knock him out for a few games. So he has to prove that he can stay fully healthy for a full season. But we're already at that point now here in year 3.
Well, all I have to say based on that is you don't bench a guy who's going to be drafted in the first or second round, and you bet on the guys that are going to be drafted high. Just keep it simple. Arch Manning, who's he played against? Quinn Ewers, I think you guys all said it, played against better competition. Chip, you said he won at Alabama, he won at Michigan. That's all I need to see. Not even a question in my opinion. All right, quarter of the season in the books. Who is your Heisman winner? Now, before we go anywhere, Arch Manning on BetMGM is plus 1,600. And Quinn Ewers is off the board. So, Chip, obviously, we know what you're going to do, right?
Well, I'm not taking Arch Manning at this price. Are you kidding me? No. We wait till Quinn Ewers is back on the board, and we take Quinn Ewers. Because Quinn Ewers, going into the game where he got injured against UTSA, was one of the names at the top of this board. And I don't think a tummy ache is going to keep him out for much longer. And I think that when he comes back in the Red River rivalry, in a game that he absolutely needs to win to cement his legacy as one of Texas's great quarterbacks, I think that is going to kickstart a really strong finish to the season. I mean, he's going to have Georgia coming to town on October the 19th. There are these massive opportunities for Quinn Ewers to be able to reassert himself in this Heisman race. I think that he was leading the conversation before the injury, and I think that when he returns, he'll be right back in the mix.
All right, so Emory, you're going to go with a guy that you have talked up all year, who happens to be now the betting favorite on the board, which is kind of surprising.
It's crazy because I've talked about Cam Ward on the, Columbia broadcast system since 2021 when he was at Incarnate Word. But listen, at the end of the day, this is a guy that has not only the splash plays that kind of wow the Heisman voters, but also the schedule. Right now, Miami is a favorite in the ACC, and they're going to run the table, in my opinion, in that conference. And therefore, he's going to have a lot of big plays, a lot of big games, a lot of splash Heisman-type worthy moments that's going to make him the guy. And at least he's going to get to New York. And I do feel like that's why he's a favorite. And until Ewers gets back and gets back to playing, but we know how the Heisman race is. Once you're out of sight for a week, you're out of mind. And so I like Cam Ward because I like the team that he's on, and he's going to continue to stockpile Heisman moments and big plays, and therefore we'll see him in New York hoisting the trophy.
Mike, I love your pick. I just have to say right off the bat, because when you and I agree, I feel better about things. Why Jackson Dart?
Look, first I will say I like Jackson Dart a lot. I like Cam Ward. I bet on Cam Ward. I'm just not going to double down on it at this point at the new price point. I think there's still a little value left on Dart. I think you should be right there with Cam Ward around plus 500. So a little value here left on this one. And for me, Jackson Dart, just looking at the numbers he's put up already in the system he gets to do it in, we know Lane Kiffin is almost always going to be comfortable running up the score on anyone at any point throughout the season. And I think he's got some good opportunities coming up. It wasn't just the fact that they crushed lower level competition, went on the road, Wake Forest, were 3 touchdown favorites and easily covered that spread. But frankly, it's what they got coming up as well. You got one more game against Georgia Southern to really put up video game numbers. And then you get Kentucky in Oxford. I actually like the way Ole Miss matches up with Kentucky. I know we saw Georgia struggle with them. Ole Miss is going to beat Kentucky by double digits at home in this particular matchup. So I love this particular spot. If I'm right about that spot, this number will be long gone. He will be the front runner tied with Cam Ward 2 weeks from now. So I'm going to play it at plus 700 because it's only moving one way, in my opinion, until they lose 2 games.
Yeah, I agree completely, Mike. I think that's a spot on point with Jackson Dart. Listen, their offense is the best in the country. They're averaging nearly 600 yards a game, albeit they haven't played a heck of a lot. But he's averaging nearly 400 yards a game, 11 total touchdowns. I mean, there are only 3 ranked teams left on the schedule: LSU, Oklahoma, both whose defenses I question, and then Georgia. So you're right. I mean, I see them losing no more than 2 games. He's going to be in New York, and I think that it's either Cam Ward, Jackson Dart, or maybe throwing a Dylan Gabriel. And I feel pretty good about my picks that I have bet on before the season. All right. So if you want to find out more of these best bets, I know the place to go, and that is sportsline.com. Use promo code WINNERS for 60% off an annual plan. It's a better code than you will find on the site. Promo code WINNERS gets you 60% off an annual plan that's only $39.99 going forward. Coming up next, USC is favored in the Big House over the defending national champs. Say it ain't so, Michigan fans. Make our top selections here on the Early Edge College Football Pick Show. Welcome back to the Early Edge, and it is time for our Week 4 picks. Let's start with the Big Ten showdown on Friday night. Nebraska and Illinois just screams defense, or does it? All right, Mike, I want to start with you. You have a first quarter bet, so let's go there first.
Yeah, I love a good first quarter bet in college football. I'm going to lay the 1.5 with Nebraska, though. Here, look, I think they will have some success with the scripted drive, but let's talk about Memorial Stadium, one of the best home field advantages in all of sports, not just college football, especially in prime time on a Friday night like this. This stadium will be absolutely rocking, especially you see that little number 22 next to the name. It's been a while since we've seen this program ranked like this. I think it's going to be a nice atmosphere. I think Raiola is going to have a successful drive early. You mentioned the defense. I think Nebraska's defense will absolutely show up. I think the game could be a little lower scoring, but I think we get at least 3 points in the opening frame from Nebraska. I'll lay the 1.5.
Yeah,
right.
That's spot on. Nebraska has gotten into a position where they jump out to an early lead against Colorado, then kind of defend it. They jump out to an early lead against Northern Iowa. They kind of defend it. And against Illinois, I just don't think the Fighting Illini are going to go away. I don't think that Brett Bielema's crew is the kind of group that is going to not be able to hang in this game long enough to be able to make it a 1-score game in the fourth quarter. Now, I believe that the home field advantage of Memorial Stadium is one of the best in the country when Nebraska's running hot. And as Mike mentioned, this is hot for Nebraska in recent years. But I just think that this Illinois team has not been exactly what I expected. I thought they would run the ball better than they have. Luke Altmaier's got 6 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Is he going to be able to keep things clean? I just see a game that is lower scoring. When you're giving me Illinois more than a touchdown, more than 8 points, I like being able to take the dog in that spot. Underdog low total. Let's go ILL.
Yeah, listen, Illinois to me is a team that this is going to be 60 minutes of 9-on-7. This is a football guy's game because you have Brett Bielema coaching up his side of the ball, and you have what they do over there in Nebraska. Nebraska runs the football extremely well. Every game you watch, I'm just amazed at how accurate they are in blocking up counterplay and power play because every big red jersey is lined up on the defender and knocking them out the way, and the running backs have easy access to the second and third level. And I'm glad Chip brought up Altmaier because he's playing really well this year. Helps balance out their offense until they figure out their run game, like he mentioned. But I do feel like Illinois in this spot is being underrated. 9.5 points, 9 points to Nebraska, and what could be a physical point of attack game. This screams take Illinois and the points and also the under.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all in agreement here. I'm going to play the under 42.5. I mean, the last 2 years we saw games of 26-9 and 20-7, way under this total of 42.5. The under is 6-0 combined in the team's first 6 games. We saw that Nebraska defense, what they did to Shedeur Sanders. I don't think that Illinois' offense is going to get much going. But then again, I don't think Nebraska's offense is going to get much going either. Nebraska 23, Illinois 16. We'll just keep it simple here. Speaking of low-scoring games, I can't even believe this line. We're seeing number 11 USC is a 6-point favorite going into the big house at number 18 Michigan, who, by the way, probably shouldn't be number 18. Emory, we'll start with you on this one. Which way do you lean?
This is old school Pac-12 versus Big Ten in terms of speed and explosiveness versus power and brute and strength. And in those situations, a lot of times we used to see Pac-12 just outrun the Big Ten. Now, granted, things have changed in college football to where the Big Ten now has speed and explosiveness, but Michigan still has quarterback questions. I don't care who you put back there. I don't care if you put Drew Henson back there. The point still stands. This USC team has now gotten confidence on defense. We know about their offense. I would lay these points comfortably with USC. I'm not saying it's going to be like what Texas did to Michigan a few weeks ago, but it's going to be pretty doggone close. So I like the Trojans in this big spot against the Wolverines.
And I'm looking at a contrarian stance here on the over 46.5. I think the numbers move too much. 47 still a pretty key number in both the NFL and college football. I set the number at 51, though. And a lot of it is some respect to Lincoln Riley and this USC team. I think they're going to figure out ways to score. And if they do have success scoring, I don't think the foot is ever coming off the pedal in this game. I think the idea of getting a big win on the road in the Big Ten like this against Michigan is going to be important for several reasons. Number one, look at what Texas just did to them. If they escape with a narrow win and then lose games down the road to Penn State and others, it could matter for their chances of getting into the college football playoff. If they win this with a statement win and keep the foot on, I think that's what's going to happen. But I also think Texas is just the best team in college football, and I don't think Michigan is as bad as they put on film against Texas. I think that these teams are a little closer than that. So I think I think Michigan can push enough. If they're able to contribute 17 points here, this game's going over because Lincoln Riley is not taking the foot off the gas whatsoever in this game.
Fight.
All right, so here we go. We're going to be going with one of my favorite plays, and that's going to go under because I want to put respect on his name. It's D'Anton Lynn. But around this house, we call him D'Underlin because he has done so much to be able to create the ultimate. You think it's one thing, but it's the other. You think it's Lincoln Riley. You think it's USC. Man, surely this is going to be a group that goes over the total. Oh, no. Because what happened in that game against LSU? Under the total by about 20 points. You hang a 61 out there, they win 48-0. This is a USC team that, in addition to getting much better defensively, they are not playing with the same Lincoln Riley tempo that we are used to. Some of that might be the helmet communication. That is one thing we've seen across college football, where helmet communication actually leads to offenses going slower. Some of that might be Miller Moss and the kind of quarterback he is. You know, Miller Moss is getting rid of the ball faster than Caleb Williams did, and yet USC is going slower. It's much more efficient. It's much more calculated. And then when I saw that we were going to be going to Alex Orji, what does that mean for Michigan? It means Michigan is run. Maybe throw to a tight end. Run. Michigan wants to shorten this game as few possessions as possible, smash you at the line of scrimmage. So I like going under the total here. It will be a sweat because there are athletes on both sides of the ball, and you could have a pick six or a special teams touchdown, throw this whole thing into array. But I'm going to keep riding with the under Lynn, and I'm going to keep going with the under in this one.
That's a great pick, Chip. And I hate to be on the opposite side of M squared here and his model, which is usually spot on, but I just can't bet an over in a Michigan game right now. So I'm on the under 46.5. How the heck is Michigan going to score more than twice? I mean, they're only averaging 153 passing yards per game. And now, as you said, Chip, they're bringing in their running quarterback instead of the Davis Warren as a passer. No thanks. Michigan's going to have to run for 250 or more yards and keep the ball for 35 or more minutes. Not sure that's going to happen. I think the game will be close. I think their defense will step up. Still, USC 23, Michigan 17, that under 46.5. I don't think we're going to have to sweat it, but we'll see. We're not done with the top week 4 matchups. 2 more ranked versus ranked matchups this week. How will Oklahoma fare in their SEC opener? Find out next on The Early Edge. Back on The Early Edge, and it is a battle for Big 12 supremacy. The winner of this game will be the leader in the clubhouse to represent the conference in the college football playoff. Sorry to my Arizona Wildcats. I just had to get my weekly mention here on the show. All right, it is Utah at Oklahoma State. And Mike, you're going to start us off because you are not taking a side. You're going to play the total.
Yeah, I'm going to play the total here. You see, I went under 53.5. Look, I know these teams can absolutely put up points and not particularly great defensively, but I do think this game settles in and becomes a little more competitive. I think both sides understand what's at stake in this matchup here. And I think the number's too high at 53.5. I would set the number here at 49, which again is still an extremely competitive game and high total in this spot. So I'm going under, and it also has to do with Cam Rising a little bit. I think he's going to be fine. It's an injury on his throwing hand, but they've taken the precautions. They could have brought him back really at any point if we're talking must-win games. This is the spot where they were able to bring him back here. So it is something that I think he plays through, but you have to talk about it because he is still one hit away from leaving this football game, which would put him in trouble. So I think that Gordon's going to run fine for Oklahoma State. I think they're going to choose some clock in this one, and I think we get a competitive game that stays under the total of 53.5.
I felt like a proud papa watching Oklahoma State last weekend against Tulsa because usually that's the game that Oklahoma State would blow based on how the schedule was set up. You had Arkansas, Tulsa, and now Utah. Normally, Oklahoma State would beat the team the week prior, come back and lose to ITT Tech, and then go out there and play a meaningless game against another ranked opponent. But I like that they went out there and dominated Tulsa from start to finish. That gives me so much confidence of them going into this ballgame because we haven't really seen a focused Oklahoma State team throughout the course of the year. And this team is focused. All those seniors returned, 20 returning starters. And this football team, Bowman is throwing the football well. Gordon should get going like we expect him to be getting going, like we saw all throughout his career. I think they go in there and take care of business. I like this one strongly. Give me Oklahoma State.
Amen. All right. Oklahoma State understood the assignment. And what the assignment was to put the opponent away, to make them quit, and go into their house and grind your feet on their couch. And that is exactly what Oklahoma State did to Tulsa so that you could just take your foot off the gas and cruise on to one of the biggest daggum games of the year in the Big 12. Look, it is put up or shut up time in Stillwater because Oklahoma State is a team that with all that experience back, with Ollie Gordon back, with the 7th-year quarterback, we looked at them as a team that could contend for the Big 12 title. Well, look, some teams get to take a couple of weeks to play their best football for the biggest games of the year. It's right now. Okay, because you got Utah, then you got Kansas State up next. If Oklahoma State wants to be competitive for a Big 12 championship in the 2024 season, you need to play your best football right now. Ollie Gordon has not played his best football so far, 3.5 yards per carry. That is nowhere close to where he was 1 year ago. Do I think that Oklahoma State was playing possum throughout its non-conference slate? No, I thought they played poorly against Arkansas, but were able to right the ship. And as Emory mentioned, to come into that road trip to Tulsa, I know it's not much of a road trip and your fans are going to be there too, but still you were just so focused and you took care of business. I think Oklahoma State, the paddles, The home field advantage, T-Boone Pickens Stadium, they know what time it is. Now's the time for one of your biggest games of the season. I think Oklahoma State does it. I think they win, but I'll take the 2.5 too.
No, I'm taking Chip. Give me the money line at plus 110. This feels like a gift to me because the Cowboys are 7-0 straight up in their last 7 at home against ranked teams dating back to 2020. Cam Rising, only 5-4 on the road as a starter. Not great. It's kind of a weird stat considering the guy's like 35 years old. Oklahoma State 12-0 since 2023 when Ollie Gordon has a rushing touchdown. I would assume that's going to be a focus. I expect him to get 25 plus carries this week. And this is by far Utah's toughest game of the season because let's be honest, these are the two best teams in the Big 12. Give me Oklahoma State 31 and Utah 27. Now, if you're an Oklahoma fan, I apologize for this segment because this is just pure pain. You had 3 of us that are taking Oklahoma State, and then you have, well, we're going to preview Tennessee and Oklahoma. And just a spoiler alert, it's not going to be pretty. Chip, we'll start with you.
Okay, so there are only 14 teams in the country, 14 teams that have not trailed for a single second. Oklahoma is one of those teams. Now, Oklahoma also is second nationally in number of seconds that they have held a lead in the game, trailing only Ole Miss. So I ask you, why, when we look at Ole Miss, do we see a juggernaut? And when we look at Oklahoma, we wonder if they've got the goods. Well, because we've got eyes. And because we know that while Oklahoma has led for almost as much as anybody in the country, it has looked hard. And Ole Miss and Tennessee and all these other teams, they make it look easy. Now, I think Oklahoma's got a nasty defense. And while Tennessee's offense has been beaten up on teams, they are going to be challenged by Oklahoma's defense and the level of athleticism that the Sooners have on that side of the ball. But I don't know if Oklahoma can block Tennessee's defensive front. I don't know if Oklahoma is going to be able to run the football outside of maybe using Jackson Arnold to run. And Deion Burks might be able to get his. But tell me who the next best wide receiver is for Oklahoma. Because I'll tell you, he doesn't have more than a half dozen catches. If it ain't Deion Burks, it ain't there. And I just think that this Oklahoma team is flawed. And I think that Tennessee, we will start to see that they are not perfect, quite like their statistics suggest. But I do think that they are more than a touchdown better than the Sooners. Lay 'em with the Vols.
I'm right there with you, Chip. I made this number all the way up to 10, and I understand why some might only say it should be 3, 3.5, or 4. Oklahoma is a fine team, and on paper, they've been okay, and they get a lot of respect because of the name value, because they've had a tremendous program for a long time in college football. But when you look at this Tennessee team and this matchup in particular, they have one distinct edge, and it's their defensive line against Oklahoma's offensive line. Oklahoma's not going to be able to run the football. Tennessee will get pressure on Jackson Arnold here. I actually think Tennessee scores a defensive touchdown in this game, but I love this spot for Tennessee. I think that you're right, Chip. They are facing a tough defense in Oklahoma. It's going to take Tennessee 3.5 minutes to score instead of 90 seconds in this game. They are going to put points on the board. I love Tennessee here, -7.
They also have the best quarterback of the two in Nico Iamaleava for Tennessee. And when you combine his ability as a dual threat and those guys that they have out on the perimeter, along with the offensive line, it's a bad matchup for Oklahoma. They can hold their own early. We'll probably see them play great defense against this Vols offensive attack for the first quarter. But at some point, it's like a kid holding a 45-pound weight. It's going to keep sliding, then boom, the bottom will fall out. It'll fall on the floor, and Tennessee will be up 24-7 before you know it. So I like Tennessee in this game big because at the end of the day, you guys touched on it. Their defense is excellent. And when you watch Oklahoma passing game, Jackson Arnold really hadn't played well to the point where the stats may tell you he's balling, but I feel like he's just doing okay. And this is not the game where you just want okay at the position. And I know Tennessee Vol fans were upset last Saturday when I didn't have him in my top 12. I said that you could kind of, Ole Miss and Tennessee are sharing the same schedule. Both guys are, perfecto prep, DeVry, all these schools, right? But at least Tennessee, you can see where they have a little bit more talent. But I do like them in this big game, and they'll remind me, they played NC State. Cool, the same NC State that was about to get beat by Western Carolina. But this is the game that everyone will focus on and say Tennessee deserves to be in the top 4, not just top 12.
Emory, I think you're spot on about Jackson Arnold. I wasn't impressed when I saw him play in the Alamo Bowl against a team who shall not be mentioned. Well, actually, it was my Wildcats last year and lost 38-24. But as you mentioned, he hasn't topped 200 yards passing in the 3 games against these weaker opponents. Now, Tennessee 11-1 straight up, 9-3 against the spread in their last 12 against ranked opponents. But how can I bet against a team that was up 37-0 after the first quarter last week, held their opponent to negative 31 total yards in that quarter? Impossible. Tennessee 37, Oklahoma 21. Chip, hit the music.
Let the children sing.
I don't even know what to say to that. We've gone through the top games, but now it's time to see our week 4 best bets. Find out next on the Early Edge. It is time for our best bets here on the Early Edge, and here is the recap screen. We all went 1-1 last week. I was so close. I mean, if TCU makes that field goal, I'm 2-0, and I'm atop the standings. They did. Emory and I are 4-2, Chip 3-3, Mike 2-4. Let us pick it up, and we are going to start with the leader, Emory. And is this a biased pick? Because we know where you played football, that big red helmet behind you from Louisiana, and you're picking him on the money line this week.
First of all, who do Tulane think we are? Scheduled us at some bounce back game after they done played Oklahoma and also Kansas State. We're not a bounce back game. We're coming off of a bye. We just beat the brakes off Grambling. We're running through the state of Louisiana like bad gumbo. Put Tulane on the field. Their first trip to Lafayette since 2012. We're about to run through Tulane Green Wave on the money line. And here's the football analysis part. My alumni bias aside. O-line, D-line for the Cajuns are excellent. They can run the football. Have an NFL prospect in A.J. Gilly at guard. On defense, Casey Asai, the brother of Joseph Asai, who plays in the NFL, he can get pressure and he stops the run. So you can run the ball, stop the run. Ben Warwick, the quarterback, does a great job being efficient. And oh, by the way, he is also a dual threat. The Cajuns will slowly choke out the Green Wave, take them on the money line.
Y'all hear Marshall head coach Charles Huff, his recruiting pitch to Ohio State? You got all you can eat biscuits and gravy, NIL opportunities. I mean, what else could you want? Like, wouldn't you want to leave Columbus and head to West Virginia for that? I think that Charles Huff is cracking jokes because he's looked at the tape and he's looked at his team and he understands that moving the football or even scoring the football is going to be very difficult. Because we all want to talk about, Jeremiah Smith, maybe one of the best wide receivers in the country, being a true freshman, of Chip Kelly and what he's doing with this offense. But the reason why Ohio State is going to contend for a national championship in 2024 is because the Silver Bullets defense is back. That group is flat out nasty, and they play with a pride that wants to keep you out of the end zone for all 4 quarters. Which is why one of our best bets for this week is Marshall team total under 6.5. Maybe you end up jumping on a fumble in scoring position, but you're only going to get a field goal out of it. The Herd don't find the end zone. Marshall team total under.
I'm looking USC Michigan. I'm going over this total of 46.5. I know it is a very contrarian viewpoint this week, but I think this number has fallen far too far here. When you look at totals in college football, even especially in the NFL, but even in college football, 47, a very, very key number. When I look at USC, I think that they definitely have the skill set and the personnel to go win and potentially win big like Texas did in the Big House. But I know one thing, Lincoln Riley knows that this game is important for their college football playoff future, and they will try to run the score up if they get the opportunity to. I just don't think Michigan is as bad as we saw. I think Texas is the best team in college football, and I think they're just extremely dominant. So I think we see a more competitive game here, at least for 3.5 quarters before USC pulls away. We're going over this total. Michigan contributes 17 points here. We're sailing over the 46.5.
Let's take Bowling Green plus 23.5 at Texas A&M. Now, the Falcons a few weeks ago gave Penn State a scare into the fourth quarter, only losing by 7. And just to, update all of you, Penn State is better than Texas A&M on both sides of the ball, in my opinion. A&M 5-7 against the spread in their last 12 as a favorite of 20 or more points. Bowling Green 5-1-1 in their last 7 as an underdog of 20 or more points. This one stays within that number, much less 23.5. Give me A&M 31, Bowling Green 16. Emory, that gumbo line in Louisiana was so good. I don't know if anyone will top it all season on this show. Let's hear your next pick.
Well, listen, you like that take, you'll love this one because this is not a hot take. This is hardcore football analysis of what I believe. Army will be 10-0 by the time they get to Notre Dame. And we're going to be talking about Army as a potential playoff team because this defense is outstanding. We know about the triple option. Rice has to travel up to Michie Stadium. Very tough place to play. And a very tough offense. We talked about the, stopping the option offense and how you have to be disciplined consistently. One person out of place, even if it's on the backside and it's a touchdown. And defensively, because they are able to play aggressive and disrupt the passing game and get after the quarterback, I will lay these points with Army. I would also take the under. This game could look a lot like what they did last week or last time they played 24-7. That seems like an Army game. Helps us cash both.
Mike, I know what you did here. You didn't think I was going to let you talk about Kansas State earlier in the show, so you had to put them in somewhere on this program.
Kansas State -6.5, a lot like last week against Arizona. They should be on the other side of the 7 here with this number. I know it's a difficult place to go play on the road, and it is a potential letdown spot as you've got this game here after beating Arizona. But I personally think Kansas State had a little bit of a coming out party with Avery Johnson there. If you watch that game, he got whatever he wanted with his legs. And when the ground game opened up with his legs, we already know that they've got the 2 running backs in Giddens and Edwards. Edwards showed his talent really on special teams as well. But as the ground game, which make no mistake, Kansas State is going to be a team that runs the football. As Avery started to run more, that's where the tight ends really started to work in. I love the tight ends that they've got with Braden Lofton and Will Swanson. They're going to continue to catch footballs over the middle of the field as Avery creates with his legs. So they've got to figure some things out defensively. Time will do that, but look for Kansas State to dominate time of possession, have long sustained drives, and put points on the board. -6.5 here at BYU.
Chip, you know what everybody likes to bet? Overs. So we're taking care of the people with our last 2 picks.
So unders have been hot, and we've seen a little bit of a bounce back. The lines have adjusted. First 2 full weeks, the unders were definitely cashing at a profitable margin if you took every single one of them. But you just got to know a matchup when you see it. You just got to know a team that is going to be not an undertaker, but an overtaker. And the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets are that team because with Haynes King, with this offense, boy, they can score. They can score. They got 20-plus offensive touchdowns on the season so far. However, their defense, while I think they are better coached under Tyler Santucci, they went from being like dead last in the ACC to being like, 10th, bottom middle of the pack. And Louisville has not yet played a team that can give us a data point that we can trust. But those untrustworthy data points says Jeff Brom can still coach up some offense and that Tyler Shuck, when healthy, has himself an arm that can push the ball down the field. Now, I look at this and we go back to Georgia Tech Syracuse. That total finished at 59, 31-28. Georgia Tech always frisky as a double-digit dog against ranked teams. I think this is a back-and-forth game, higher scoring. I like going over the 57.5.
And I'm going to roll with the Ole Miss Georgia Southern over 66. Now, this is a battle of former USC coaches. We've got Lane Kiffin against Clay Helton. Now, listen, there's offensive guys. Ole Miss leads the nation in yards per game, 692. And, of course, we need to boost that Jackson Dart Heisman campaign that we talked about earlier in the program. It's probably a good place to do it. Georgia Southern, they scored about 36 points a game, scored 45 on Boise State. Never mind that Boise State dropped over 50 on them. Ole Miss will as well. Ole Miss 59, Georgia Southern 20, and this over flies high. All right, let's recap our best bets here. Emory, he loves Louisiana so much, +130 against Tulane, and Army -5.5 against Rice. Chip is on Marshall, team total under 6.5, and the Louisville Georgia Tech over 57.5. Mike loves that over in USC Michigan over 46.5 as a contrarian play, and of course he had to throw in Kansas State -6.5. I'm going with Bowling Green +23.5 at Texas A&M and then the Ole Miss Georgia Southern over 66. Now, coming up next, which Week 4 favorites are on upset alert, and can't Emory Hunt pick his 4th straight upset winner? We'll find out who coming up. Welcome back to the Early Edge. Now, 2 of us nailed our upset picks last week, and Chip came so close for South Carolina fans. But Emory is absolutely on fire. Look at this. He's up 6.5 units in 3 weeks. I mean, I hit a plus 200 last week. That was nice. But Stan, it's nothing compared to what Emory is doing. So I'm sure he's cooked up something special for us to try to go 4-0. You almost have to play everything that Emory puts out in this segment, or do we? Emory, what do you got for us this week?
This was a lot tougher than it seems, because this is a very evenly matched week of college football opponents. But I found one. FAMU taking on Troy. Florida A&M has a fantastic roster on both sides of the ball. If you watch how they're built on the offensive line and on the defensive line, James Ash leads them on the defensive line. They have an NFL prospect as well, like Cohen and Kendall Bowler, a guy that's a Senior Bowl watch list guy. Offensively, quarterback Daniel Richardson transferred in from Florida Atlantic, and they've always had consistently good quarterback play. Their offense can throw the football. Richardson is a dual threat guy. Troy is having an off year, and I feel like this is a great spot for the SWAC to get their first FBS win since 1985, when Grambling took on Oregon State in Grambling and knocked off the Beavers. So I think we get this week with FAMU knocking out Troy.
This program needs a little more cowbell here. I'm talking Mississippi State and Florida, 11 a.m. kickoff with the cowbells in Starkville. Look, these two teams really have had a rough start to the season. When you look at Mississippi State, obviously, Jeff Lebby, it's a new era there, and it definitely has not started the way they want. I think that they bounce back with a lot of energy on their home field after the way they were embarrassed last week by Toledo. Now, Toledo is a very good team, but they should not be going in there and crushing SEC opponents like that. For Florida, they're going to play both quarterbacks once again. I think this thing's going to continue to spiral out of control. But when you look at the spread in this game, I don't think Florida should be laying almost a touchdown on the road to any team in the SEC. I don't care if it's Mississippi State in a struggling situation. It's a very early kickoff game. We know Mississippi State will be fired up after the way they just lost. Like them here outright on the money line.
Yeah, when we're looking for these underdog moneyline plays or moneyline sprinkles, however you want to call it, I always like to go for variance. And there are very few quarterbacks at the power conference level which provide more variance than Michigan State quarterback Aiden Childs. Because within the same drive, you can see one throw that says, now I see why you are going to be playing in the NFL one day. And you can see another throw that says, you should be sitting on the bench right now. 4 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, only 56% completion percentage. So let's go with the variance. Michigan State as a dog at BC.
Chip, I came so close to picking that one, but in honor of you, I had to go with James Madison, plus 315 at North Carolina. Worst case, I'll take the 10.5 points here. What's going on with that UNC passing game without Max Johnson? Is Connor Harrell the guy? I'm not sure. Watch out for Alonzo Burnett, the third, the dual threat quarterback from JMU. This one's going to be close for at least 3 quarters. And at this price, take a shot at that the JMU defense slows down star running back O'Marion Hampton. All right, Chip, what do you think? Good or bad pick?
There's nothing good that can come of this. You win, nobody's happy. You lose, they're actually mad. So don't lose.
Guys, it has been a blast. Once again, our dogs of the week. Emory's got Florida A&M plus 1,200 against Troy. If he hits, we should all just quit this segment. Mike has Mississippi State plus 176 against Florida. Chip has Michigan State plus 200 at Boston College. And I'm going with James Madison plus 315 at North Carolina. This should be a fun week for. There's one thing that I've learned is that I should never go with a showdown against any one of these guys. They're just too smart. Nonetheless, here's to a profitable week for all 4 of us. For Chip Patterson, Emory Hunt, and Mike McClure, I'm Eric Cohen. Thanks for watching the Early Edge College Football Picks Show. As I always like to say, let's hit it big. Good luck.